Many people have problems with art and not with reality.
So why is art different?
It's pretty simple, right?
This is knowledge, this is thinking, this is thought.
Yeah, it does something strange with your head.
Welcome to the Undergang Armchair.
Bring it.
Welcome to episode 66 of the Undergang Armchair. My name is Ando. Just wait till we get to 666. So this is pretty exciting. This is our first live, well, not live, but recorded live in front of a audience podcast. We recorded here in Copenhagen at the Museums building, which is the home of the Banja Rathnov Gallery, probably the most beautifully housed gallery here in town. It's a beautiful historic building. And we sat down and talked with Augusta Atla and Nikos Branidis, who have a show there right now. It was really interesting to do it live. We're going to do more of this in the future. We had an audience of about 10 people, so it was perfect for the first time. And we had a little artist talk. So we hope you guys will enjoy this. There's no other news this week. Go see some art. It's out there. Go see this show. The only other thing I'd like to touch on is a special thanks to the Danish Arts Council, who have been extremely kind in supporting this show and making it happen. We are not that many steps away from bringing the show back to being weekly. We're almost there, guys, almost there. So any help you have telling friends helps us get one step closer to that goal. Augusta and Nikos' show is big. It's up until 18th of November. And it encompasses a huge range of works, you know, silk screens on fabric, works on paper, traditional darkroom prints, installation, video. It just shows the wide range and interest these two artists have. And I'd say it's well worth going and seeing. But like always, they can tell it better than I can, so let's get straight to it. Enjoy our first live episode ever. Yes, my name is Ando. Hello, welcome everybody. This is a podcast that I am the host of called the Undergang Armchair. And it's basically a show where I sit down and have conversations with artists about their work, about the realities of being an artist, about the pain in the ass of being an artist, the joys, the up, the down, all of it. And this is our first live episode. So... Woo! So I hope everyone got I hope everybody got a jacket and a glass of wine. and welcome. So yeah, we're here because it is Augusta and Nikos' show here at the Museumsbygning. And I invited them to come talk to me for this show, and they said, let's do it live. So that's why we're here today.
Yeah.
And
I had no idea it would be so cold, and I wouldn't have suggested it.
Yeah.
Anyway.
But I basically wanted to start by talking about or asking first you, Augusta, where you come from and how this show came about. I mean, you're obviously from Denmark, but
yeah, I'm born in Hellerup, a little bit outside Copenhagen, eller in Gentofte, and. I don't know. I was always wanting to travel a lot from I was a child. And I got very restless with Copenhagen when I was around 17. And at that time, Copenhagen was quite a different city than what it is now.
How so?
I'm very pleased to come back to a developed city. I thank you for preparing my homecoming.
But how was that? How is it different?
Oh, it's very different. Everything was different. The design, the exchange of design values, the spirit of entrepreneurship, the even film as an establishment of exchange of ideas and.
Are you telling me that
even
Copenhagen
the city was
like
different? The international awareness was completely different. It's a lot better now.
Was it like what
before
people
it was
talk about
unlivable
Jutland
for
now?
me. Now is within reason that I can start debating.
Copenhagen, within reason. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I know what you mean.
Hugely different. Yeah. Even the awareness in the art school and the art academy here, they really want to know what's going on in other academies, especially in London. And when I was applying for school in London, there was a sense. I know that they do have some scouts in goldsmiths at the school at that time to kind of figure out how they were doing it other places, but there wasn't the same. They were more proud that we do it our way and we're not going to negotiate it. But they slowly, while I was in London, from 2003 and onwards, I felt that, okay, there's starting to become a self-reflection in Copenhagen, even in the art academy, which is was a very heavy Danish establishment.
And it still is in a lot of ways.
It is, but it's a lot better, and you can't. I have very little criticism now of what they're doing, but at that time the reason why I wasn't studying there was because I thought it was very heavy and very closed around their own ideas. That's why I went to London, because there you have so much diversity and you have so much influences from so many cultures that very few people have the luxury to have any kind of arrogance about all kinds of values.
Yeah, that's probably healthy.
Yeah,
you really have to
healthy. That's
eat
why
shit for a while.
I went traveling.
What about you, Nikos?
I have born in Athens, grew up in the northeast corner of Greece, near Turkey and Bulgaria, and studied in Thessaloniki, mathematics.
Ooh.
Yeah. I was already writing a lot and making photos from teenager, and then I continued there to make photography, make some exhibitions with other guys who do the same. And now I live in Athens, and we are in Copenhagen. It's nice. We have a show. Yeah, it's beautiful.
Do you practice mathematics still at all?
Yeah, I give some lessons to child. Not anymore. Before a couple of years I was still doing it, but not anymore. But some ideas of mathematics and some tricks and hits and tricks from mathematics, I use it even in art. I
was going to say, because you know actually something useful. So why the hell did you get into arts?
Useful? You are the bad guy for the child. You go there, mathematics, and they run around the table and you hand them. Okay.
All right, fair enough. But how did you guys meet each other? You guys met in Athens, or?
We met first time in the Royal Garden of Copenhagen with some friends. We was there for, but okay. We basically meet and started to be together when Augusta was for a residency in Athens 4 or 5 years before.
Yeah, we actually need to talk about this. I was looking at your website, and you've lived in Paris, in Florence, in London.
Not Florence, Milan.
Milan, okay.
Yeah.
London, Copenhagen, Athens. What am I missing?
New York for a little while, but that was more like I knew it was temporarily.
So what are you doing? What are you running away from? What did you do?
I'm very greedy with culture. As you can see also in my work, I mean, I sample a lot of images of women, and in the way that I work, I look at thousands of images all the time and every day, and I am the biggest consumer of imagery. And if an image is never an image is a symptom of thousands of complicated implications from a culture. So to be an image consumer, you are anthropologist. You learn about culture and how every form, and especially in art, the artwork become a form where you can dwell on the structures of a culture through the form, through the mediation of the images, through even the textiles, the hanging. Everything is a mediation of anthropology for me.
So are you looking at it like a researcher almost?
No, because in the end of the day, I work intuitively. No, I don't sum up intellectually when I work. But if I couldn't see how I could be an artist and live in one place, it would be very difficult. I would if you somehow were the police of the universe, and you said to me, you can only live within the natural borders of Denmark, I would have to turn every stone in Denmark and go in every fucking city. I think it's very, very difficult to be an artist and live in one place, at least in the beginning of one's practice, because it has very little to do with career. I'm very, very bad at strategy, meeting the right people, thinking in terms of strategy. I never do that.
I have to admit that's immediately what I think about first.
Yeah,
is how
I know
network
it can
is
look
everything.
quite snobbish when you look at my CV that I've traveled so much. But think about it. I'm actually sitting in a small room somewhere, collecting my freaky images and walking around, researching in a culture somewhere. I do talk with people, but I don't make any hierarchy of who I'm talking with and why I'm talking with them.
But that's what I mean. You know, since art is such a closed
I left
circuit.
London. If I was sincerely interested in a very speedy career in terms of selling my artwork in the art market, I would never have left London.
Exactly.
Yeah, I left London the moment I finished the study.
Just to make it hard?
No, to search for color, to search for all kinds of anthropological research. My art is more important than anything else. I mean, in London you can learn a lot, but I was already there 5 years, so I did see a lot already.
Yeah.
And in the end of the day, in London, after you've studied there, you learn that it's a banker's world, and it's not that interesting to make art about, to be honest. There are so many fertile things in the world to make art about.
Well, I mean, that's a tough thing. It's, art has to sustain itself to some degree, in that you have to be able to continue to make art, and whether you decide to get a job which can support making art, or whether you try to make a living off of selling art,
you have to find your own character and your
somehow
temperament.
you have to do that. You have to negotiate that world. And it just seems to me like it makes it tough to have some sort of network to draw upon if you keep leaving.
No, not at all. Because the sense of globalization is much bigger, and I have, friends in Paris. I have friends in Athens. I have friends in Rome. I even have people who invite me for shows in the respective cities. So it actually makes my network better, much better. And I know also people from Iran who will comment on my work in a way that somebody from London would never comment on my work. So you get a broader range of audience, which is very healthy for the artist, to not just know a few people and who from the same culture. And also, when I was finished with London, I was really eager to learn about a non-Northern European and a non-Anglophile way of talking about art, making art, and discussing art, and even the look of art.
I'm starting to learn that there's a big difference between Northern and Southern Europe in terms of the way they talk about art.
Yeah.
Did you also go to art school, Nikos?
No, I have not been in a fine art school.
Do you wish you did? Are you happy you didn't?
I think it's... there's many things to gain from being there. But it suits me somehow. No, I'm not sad I was not there, and I will not be if I'm not until now. I mean, 41 years old. I'm 41 now. I will not do it. And this is I mean, when in discussions with other artists, and they say, you should go to an art school, this, that. I say, because somehow maybe you have to see it from inside, you have to practice many things, and this is something that I will miss, many techniques and some discipline, because you are there in a program, you have to present some work. And almost was doubting that I'm an artist. I'm not like the other artists who've been. They say you're not here to tell me if I'm an artist or not. I write poetry, make photography from 14, 15. I do constructions. I have tried even to paint, but no, it's not my thing. Anyway, many things. And
well, it seems to me like art school, one of the big functions is literally playing artist and network building. You know, you can be an artist at home. You can paint every night all you want. Going to art school lets you play professional artists. The networking, the talking, the who's this, who's that. You know, how do I talk about my work?
I don't agree at all.
You don't. That was my experience at art school in a lot of ways.
No, I don't agree.
What do you think it is?
I think that's something that is practice that people freak out maybe on the MA, or that's why people do an MA in England, for example. That's to do this thing purely. But in the BA in London, maybe people were freaking out the last 6 months of the BA, and they were starting to think like that. But until then, they were pretty serious about what they were doing and thinking only of that.
But they learned how to talk about it?
Yeah, but the professors didn't give a shit about networking. Not at all.
No, because they're done. You know,
not necessarily. The professors were interested in develop interesting conversations and interesting art.
Yeah.
So I don't agree. I was not in London to network. I was there to get the best professors I could find on the surface of the earth, and I did get 2 very good ones.
It's a good ratio.
Yeah, they were really brilliant. I mean, they knew their art history. We could talk about Piero della Francesca from 14th century, and we could talk about printing processes in India, and talk about rituals and how people are living with art and power relationships and the construction of art. And you need to. That's why we love art.
I don't think everybody absorbs it in that level, though. I think that's kind of the problem. Do you think that a lot of people get involved in art because they feel like it's a way of life that they can relate to instead of an actual practice?
Not really, because I think fairly quickly they will realize that the lifestyle of the artist, unless you have very generous, rich parents, it's going to be very, very difficult life. So I think those who find it fancy will slowly fade out.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's not very fancy.
Yeah.
Actually, it's pretty tough. So I think I know people in my school who also slowly realized that they really respected art and artists, and they slowly understand how difficult it is, and that they would concentrate on art history or, you know, something more visual branding based or something like that.
Right, more career possibilities.
Yeah. So I think people understand it pretty quickly. Yeah.
So how did this exhibition come about? I heard you mention earlier that it's been 3 years in the making or something like that.
Yeah, it has, yeah. Basically, Banja invited me, or 2.5 years ago. And I was supposed to have this exhibition last year, but I was not ready at all. And I think, and we even had a small fight, because I had not understood that she had made a date already. So I think I burned her off last year. But we managed to become friends.
Fighting with galleries is excellent.
No, I'm very good at that. It's my expertise.
All right, well, you pulled through. That's good.
Yeah. I said sorry many times. I had not understood it, that she had really made a date.
Yeah.
Right? And it took me a long time. Yeah, I started to do this in Paris in 2013.
Now, were you guys from the beginning going to have an exhibition together? Was that the plan?
No. How would Banja know about Nicholas? He's a Greek artist. Yeah, she would have to be pretty international.
Well, yeah, but you could probably...
No, but it was a plan of the last couple of months.
Yeah, it was, exactly.
Okay.
The plan becomes like this the last 2 months.
Am I to understand that it's more separate, like you have your works and you have your works, and you guys aren't collaborating in that sense?
No, we are quite collaborating in the photography rooms.
Well, let me hear about that then.
Basically, when I had the show ready, all my show, when I say my show, I mean the color work. Because this, I worked on...
You mean the silk screen and the objects?
Yeah, all the textile work.
Yeah.
It's very much a solitary process in my studio and in my travels. But then I really love Nicholas' photography, and I love these spaces, except for the small rooms. I love them for photography. I think they're really great. It suits photography. And
it's a great space here. I mean.
And I really like me and Nicolas' photography together, so we started to have a dialogue. I asked Nicolas if he could participate, and Banja thought it was a great idea.
And then you had 2 months to make everything.
Yes, we have a. We have a.
3 months.
It was it already exists an idea of an exhibition. We have choose some photos of mine because I have left them in the corner for a few years. I was not so much into it. I have other ideas or other things to do. Anyway, so we have a set of photos. On this, I have searched more photos, and after. Also, it was another practice I do the last months, or even years, but let's say my last months more actively. All this négatif trouvé.
Found negatives, yeah.
Yes. So with my photos and Augusta's photos, and of course the rest of the artworks, there are also photos who are printed by me, but I have not made them. I have not press the button, but I choose them from found negatives of the 50s or. Something like that.
They're beautiful. I really like those.
Yeah, they're very nice.
Where, what is it about found negatives that?
I like that they come like fragments in time and in space that arrive until me, and if you see my photos are some of them. There are 2 or 3 of them. They have obviously some fragments of a marble or an ancient part of a decoration or an old temple or I don't know what they are. So that there are fragments. Also, these photos, like found negatives, they are fragments of time. They are already going through the process of corrosion or lost in time and start to fall apart, almost to disappear. So it's like kind of saving this moment or this image anyway, like the fragments they have from marbles. Also every kind of all the photography, even my photos, are fragments in space and time. So all this fits in how I see this exhibition. Also, prints of Augusta have a lot of fragments of cultural fragments, fragments of images, or
my collages are built-up fragments, basically.
Are these your images, or are they found images?
They are found images. Yeah. So
not all of them.
Not all of them. There are self-portraits and found images.
What is it for you about found images that?
I don't find Nicolas have a sense of, as far as I understand it, a sense of fate in his work, that he finds something literally on the street and introduces it. He allow life to change his the
direction of the work. Yeah.
I don't exactly work like that. I work much more goal oriented. So I search for images. So I flicker through a lot of imagery.
Do you know what you're looking for beforehand?
As a sentiment, yes.
Okay.
Yes, but I don't know how it will look when I find it. So the Mona Lisa girl, as I call her, is an Algerian lady that I found in a costume book in Paris. And it's by selecting through maybe 5,000 images. I chose her.
Jesus.
So it's they go through a pretty strange filter.
Yeah.
And I couldn't even really describe the filter, but I wanted a sense of something close to Mona Lisa, the posture of Mona Lisa, and I wanted something non-European to show, and that's maybe also why I love Greece, because you can see how Greece is the point that introduces Arabic culture into Europe, and or African culture into Europe.
Sure.
So Greece is neither European nor is it Middle East or Africa. It's somewhere blurred in between, and you can say that about the whole Europe. I mean, we have
southern Spain, southern Italy.
The whole fucking world is a collage. So if you start talking like that, we don't have any cultural origin except for Egypt, maybe. But what I like about her is that she's so similar to Mona Lisa, and Mona Lisa is so famous and is this archetype of a woman. But she is non-European, and she looks a lot kinder. So a lot of my work is really about introducing a sense of spiritual kindness.
She does look a lot nicer than Mona.
Lisa. Yeah.
Well, we'll put a picture of her up on our website so
and
people
then
can see
also,
this.
of course, it has a lot to do with feminism. That these women and this woman, for sure, was not allowed a very free life. So, for example, the way that I print on top of each other looks like the middle, the head in the middle, her head in the middle looks almost like a teardrop falling from her eye. So I actually, it can look very random how I'm working with the prints, but I'm actually doing something pretty precise, because it's very difficult to do this without it looks precise.
Right.
So I am also contemplating on the history of women and the stereotypes of women, and also perhaps her sadness being in her time. And perhaps also a kind of, what is it called? Like a virtue that in contemporary art, I really feel we need more spiritual kindness in the imagery, in the making, in the virtues that we portray, in the will of the artist to participate in the culture. I mean, you don't just make an artwork to make a question. I think the world is far too dangerous, far too difficult, far too hellish to actually allow yourself such a luxury only to raise questions. You have to come with answers too. You have to come with a set of moral. And my work, maybe nobody gets it except for me, but my work do come from a moral of further kindness in the world.
That's very interesting.
Images does help that. Images is the product of our culture. We started with the cave images. It was a way for a tribe to understand and become very strong, and we built wars even. Images that helps us create a war stronger, for good and for bad. So images are very important in our culture.
Right, they have lost any sort of implication towards power in that sense. They don't represent a ritual which is supposed to make us anything anymore. They're also a lot less rare than they used to be. I mean, that somehow connects in my mind to found images, because in the 50s, photography was something you really kind of paid attention to. If you wanted to take a picture, you thought about, it was expensive, it was time consuming, it was something which required a certain amount of skill. A negative meant a lot more then. And so what you're finding, for example, is something which someone probably labored over. And it was probably handmade, and the local photographer maybe took the picture or at least processed it, and then they become just decontextualized. You, like you were saying, you have these fragments.
Yeah, I'm very interested about all this as you talk about it. How the things look of the past, how they have a meaning from him different than from me, from him or for her, I don't know. Yeah. All these things that you can see in a photo, the context of the photo, I can understand him a little bit, or her, I don't know, and see the friends around, or
the family together.
or things that the photographer does, hobbies or travels or images from his life. Important images, important. I mean, when you press the button, it's a little bit more important than the rest. I mean, it's selected moments of his
But that's
life.
what I mean. You only took pictures when it was supposedly important. Now we take pictures because we're done looking at Twitter and we got to do something with our phone.
That's so easy. They come so easy, then they go so easy.
Exactly.
Something different photography now.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's also why we have chosen to only show handmade photography. And that's quite, it's not random that we show.
Right, you guys have only darkroom prints from negative handmade.
Yeah, because the title of the exhibition is called Helios, which means the sun in Greek. And the sun is a metaphor, always a metaphor for time. And we don't talk about mechanical time. We also talk about the preciousness of the few, elaborate time we have to do anything, maybe spiritual or creative, or that. So every print is really sacred. You use a lot of time on every print. You invest. It's also privileged that with the making, you actually have really fantastic moments. And so you cannot hurry. All these artworks, you cannot hurry them. You cannot hurry.
Right.
I mean, this one I've hanged in my studio for 3 years, and I add maybe one line in the end of it. I mean, it takes me 3 years to look at it to see is it finished or not. And maybe some people find it crazy. And it's not. You have to look through all the details, all the colors, how they variate. And this is a kind of poetic way of using time. And that's very nourishing in my understanding. And it doesn't mean to be visual, but to use time and something nourishing for your spiritual reflections on yourself and on the world. All the artworks, and that's why it's not design. It really is about the spiritual practice of the artist and the viewer. And it's very difficult to have a spiritual practice with something that's not connected to a labor. Whereas with digital photography, you can have the labor perhaps in the moment, but there is a sense of labor in the practice of handling photography, where you actually add something. It's like being a painter in the last moment. Maybe you even scratch the negative to give it a line, so you handle it from beginning to the end with the care and the reflection of the artist.
This relates to one of my favorite...
This is not really conceptual art, let's say.
Right. Well, it sounds like a pretty solid conceptual basis to work from, at least as a practice.
Okay, I understand. But it has to do with time, and that's why we have the title. Because nothing is made in order to portray an idea. Maybe it's betraying also thousands of many ideas, which they do, but we haven't left it for... We haven't skipped it, like, let somebody else would make it, or this portrays only that idea, so I print the button, or, everything is followed up with the labor of time.
Mm-hmm. This relates to one of my favorite questions to ask people, and it's not very nice to ask, but I can't resist. Why make art? Because you're talking about what's so important to you.
It's so simple to answer.
But why show it? You can make it at home, and it could mean all these things.
Okay, that's two different questions. What you are?
They're related. But why be an artist? I guess is the real question.
To not go insane. That's very simple.
Mm-hmm.
It's not a choice.
What about you? You could have been a mathematician.
It's not an easy question.
Yeah.
It's an obvious question. Why to do this? I mean, it's not. Why you don't do some practical like all the people do.
Exactly.
But it's also, this is practical. You create something. It's creative. But why? I don't want to answer the question. I want to bother to think why.
Right. Well, that may ruin the magic. It may not be a question of why. It's just a question of is. It does. You do. That makes sense. But what is it for you that keeps you from going crazy?
Well, it's the what is it called? The lamination. I don't know, laminated. You can say that in English. Mm-hmm. The lamination of virtues is very important. All my artworks are sealed.
The lamination of virtues. That is the title of this episode now.
I seal my moral in every work.
Mm-hmm.
And if I don't keep a strength with my moral in this world, I wouldn't give a damn and commit suicide. I think we have so many problems in this world, and we need lamination of morals and virtues. If you don't take a standpoint, every human being needs to take a standpoint morally in order to live. At some point it doesn't come with your morals that you were inherited from your parents. At some point you take a decision what morals you have.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes you need help of rituals or habits to keep a strength with those virtues, to have integrity. And art is great for that.
And then the sharing of it also helps.
It's great. Yeah, it seals it further.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because it can seal it in others.
Right. Well, another question I had, because this whole exhibition seems very much to be about the self as well. Even though you guys are using found images, I find it reflecting back to, you're using self-portraits in your work, but there's definitely a negotiation of self here, and
even of authorship.
Yeah, that's right.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm kind of thinking about what the role of the self is in art for you guys and how that relates to the world, the greater world.
It's very difficult. I mean, Nicholas is almost erasing the author of the artist by using found negatives.
Yeah.
As a part of the artwork.
But putting himself in there.
Yeah,
you know, when you print
much.
their image, you become the author of that image, strangely.
Yes, in a way, yes. I mean, I have not signed the artworks, but I will sign them later or tomorrow. I will put my signature. In photography, because I follow, let's say, the line of the photographers like Bresson or like this, I have started from this point of Kertész, that Bresson was saying like art without art, like because he was founding the image, just crop a piece of the reality and make art, or in time and space. So he was saying that it's being an artist like without being an artist, the art without art. It is with a lot of art, his work anyway, but somehow it's that I am the photographer is very behind. He's behind the camera, he's behind the work. He shows something else. He shows always something else. In visual art, you show yourself, or in theater, yourself much like physically you show it. So in photography, you are hidden. And to go one step more behind was to show other photos. So I am just somebody who respects this past and who keep it and who show it again. So I was for me it's one step more behind that. I am less even present, taking the work and present it like mine. It doesn't matter for me this is mine or not. It's just the act of printing someone's photo who is. And basically, for me, it's not a stolen photo of a negative. It's a found negative on the street. So I found it on the garbage. For anybody, have not a value except for me.
Right.
So I give it a new value. This is, but I like that I am hidden behind all this.
Right. But you're still there. That's the funny thing. No matter how much you try, you can't get away.
Yeah.
He's even more present, almost, if you ask me, because because it becomes a part of the title. It becomes
right. That work would have disappeared into the trash.
Yeah,
most likely.
Actually, I cared for something on the street that you didn't care about.
Well,
and I made something precious out of it.
Right.
That's also a statement, a social statement, even a care for history.
How so exactly?
Because everything in this world goes very fast. And everything is about money and profit.
It's a care for continuity,
just
a care of the past exists in the present, and
just
the
fact that
present
you
can
had the
exist
time,
in another
but
future.
even more practically, just the fact that you had the time to pick it up, use 2-3 weeks in the dark room and actually look at as complete strangers' films. This is a moment of care. This is almost a moment of. It even have an element of La Madonna or the mother caring for something, and that time is not your time, my time, it's our time. We are all here, we were all here. It's a continuity of lived lives.
Carrying something with you on your shoulders onwards.
Yes, it shows a kind of empathy for what have happened in history.
I was feeling when I was looking first time these negatives after I found them, like the same excitement that you feel when you develop some films and you look forward, you have there, and even more because it was I was developing them in time somehow, see them again.
It's like an archaeologist almost who find traces
exactly,
of history.
Like it was my first dream when I was a child to be an archaeologist, so I found elements of that there, that finding something showed again, see the past, and see it now in another
nobody
context.
Would take the time out to do that today. Very few people.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing. I think a lot of material is sliding off the edge of society and disappearing.
Yes, there are.
There's a couple of good antique stores here in Copenhagen that you find all sorts of really great stuff, and that's about to disappear. But just to get back to it, what about you in your work?
The fragments, the found objects.
Well, more that you even photograph
or
yourself.
The self in general.
And,
yeah. No, the self is very important. I mean, I've used the camera for since 2001 to photograph myself, and I was never really wanting to photograph myself. But I was wanting to learn art history, so I put myself in positions of art history until maybe 3 years ago.
Positions of art history?
Yeah, so I was
using reference, other material,
embodying Manet, the posture of an odalisque of Manet, or I was dancing like the ballet dancer of Degas. So I was embodying how male artists have literally moved around the dance of the woman artist, because I thought if I never integrated the postures a male have been moving around the female body as a physical body experience, I could never do new images myself.
This is out of respect for art history.
Yes, not out of anger, out of respect.
Where are you now? Are you past art history now, or are you still chewing on it?
I'm much more freer, yeah. I can really recognize how they were handling this body quite quickly, so I don't have to look at art history so much more, no. So the last imagery like this comes from a much more more spiritual place than actually an art history study.
Well, I notice you often cover your face. In most of the works, you're either looking away or covering your face with something, which...
because it's not a portrait of me.
Right.
I don't do portraits. It's not really me. I'm just using the body to channelize an energy that could have been anybody, really. Because every movement, if you look at a painting, it all goes back to painting. If you look at somebody sitting, I don't know, like this, just could be any situation. If her hand closes just like that, it would be a very different image. I mean, every movement, or even like that, it would be about, in painting, all the small gestures show secrets. Because the aristocrats of the past were telling secrets to one another.
And artists were talking schmack about people without them knowing it.
Yes, also. They were putting information that the buyers were not even knowing.
Exactly.
Yeah. So this was a game of codes.
Right.
And so in order to learn a little bit about all these codes, you would have to put yourself into the game physically, like a dance. So painting is a dance.
And what's photography? If painting's a dance, what's...
The control of body.
Yeah.
And at some point, I just started to want to do images of women who could show a gesture of fertility within the body and a gesture of vitality, but without using muscles, without maybe running around or being literal about it. So the gestures are very, very much in detail about how I sit and the weight and the balance and how I hold the orange. Do I squeeze it a lot or do I keep it open? I mean, it's how also ancient sculpture in Greece were developed, that they slowly started to have a movement. And how much do you press that movement? How much do you over-exaggerate that movement?
Yeah.
It depends on what you want to portray. And I want to portray in this range of work balance and sense of growth and a sense of inner resources.
Personal growth?
No. Like an understanding a spiritual understanding that life has endless ways of growing. No matter what happens on any kind of level, on a spiritual level, on a physical level, that it is wildly growing in any almost possible way. We cannot even understand it. We cannot even comprehend how wild it is.
Yeah, I mean, that's tough to represent.
I mean, you build something, and after a few years, you have a crack and a flower growing up. I mean, it's uncontrollable wild.
Yeah.
And we don't have so many images of that, and I'm not even very good at it yet, but, I start somewhere to try and persuade, and that's also why I did color a lot, to show this endless variation of the reflection of a light ray in your eye, and it's endless. It's endless fertile. We cannot understand it, how endless it is.
It's tough to represent, that's
Yes,
for sure. I mean, if it's
but
something you
it's very
can barely
fun to
wrap
try.
your brain around.
It's very fun to try. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it occurs to me that materials are very important to both of you guys. Both that
Yes.
you used, traditional photographic materials, but also there's the silk screens, the colors. You have these boxes with objects, powder, flower petals, leaves, all this stuff. What do the materials, like, what's the language you guys are using with the materials? When you could, in fact, write a novel, or you could do anything. It's,
it's very near they make me think, from my point of view, they make me think that all this it becomes a world with. It's not just prints or something very conceptual. It's organic, and you can keep it in your hand, even smell it. It makes me feel into a reality, not a fiction that a gallery space makes, but into a reality that happens into the space. And also make me feel more familiar and more like being in a room, or who somebody lives there, or some being in a home. Give me a home feeling. The materials also.
It's the intimacy of the body is present in something that is labored. And that's very important, because it's an effect, it's a visual effect. Maybe I had the pleasure of the visual intimacy while I was working. Okay, that's one thing. But the other thing is that it's very difficult to imitate. I mean, if I took one of my splashy silk screen prints on silk to a specialist and I said, copy that exactly, I think it would be quite difficult, because you have the splash, you have the labor, you have a visual effect of the time that was used to make it. And that's very important, because the viewer looks at the intimacy of the body of the maker. And that gives a presence of the maker. So the artist is very close to the viewer. Like he's just standing next to you with the presence of the body, so the viewer can see how the artist was almost, breathing and spitting on the work, so he can re-embody. If he has a sense of empathy and he has the time to look at it, he can re-embody, how would I have done it? How would I have breathed it? How would I have lived it with it? And there, empathy starts. And we like to use empathy. Empathy is exciting to understand. And already there, you're already in the work. The viewer is already in. It invites you in, the intimacy. It's very difficult to invite somebody in an artwork that has no references or traces of a human touch. It's very difficult.
Well, one of the things I find very funny about art is that it's very important to us. We all, probably you guys, the people here, find art interesting. It's important. Obviously, I do because of the show. Obviously, you guys do because you make it. But for a lot of people, they could not care at all. It's not important whatsoever.
Yeah, it's really a shame.
And it's totally a corner thing. It obviously fills a fair amount in our consciousness because people know art museums.
Okay, they do exist, the museums.
Yeah, it's not that bad. But in terms,
could have been a lot worse.
It's just, it strikes me as a hard way to communicate. If you really, really want to communicate with the world, maybe you should be a comedian, or maybe you should be a novelist, or
a pop star, something.
A pop star, exactly.
Yeah.
What's Lady Gaga really trying to tell us?
Yeah. There has to be. It's funny because it's almost like with the lack of religion. It's great to not have an authority who say how to make you think and this that. But on the other hand, it's also a loss in a way because we're not used to associate imagery or artwork with actually something sacred. And that's a shame. That's a big loss. And I don't know what we do instead. I mean, in the ancient time in Greece, you have 25,000 people coming for festivals, for the theater festivals. It was a huge part of the culture. Now we do what? Football? I think so. I think that's the equivalent almost. And
Facebook.
Facebook, yeah. And it's very sad because actually to develop a culture, you do need a language that reflects upon emotion, our emotional life.
Yeah.
And pop stars don't necessarily reflect. They explain or is an immediate mediator.
Right.
So in a culture, it's very important to have an emotional reflection. That's what you call catharsis, and that's what the ancient culture in Greece was built upon. They invented theater to have a catharsis. The tragedies come from there. Because if we don't have an outlet, a vessel to reflect upon or to deliver a dwelling space for our psychoanalytical or emotional space, it will go crazy. I mean, to sleep and to have our dreams is not enough. We need also collective space where I understand that you are spiritual too. We are not just making money and profit. We are also here to learn about our emotional structures and to even question spiritual structures. When I say spiritual, it's very vague, but, just a kind of a reflection space. Doesn't even have to be based on anything spiritual like that or spiritual like that. It doesn't matter. Just the fact that you're reflecting on life and reflecting on being.
Sure.
And what else but art can do this today if you're not religious? I don't know it.
There aren't many cathedrals left, I guess you could say.
So it's very important in our culture.
Yeah. Well, I mean, with greater individuality comes a more splintering of culture, right? That we are freer to pursue what we want, but there's less centralized, meaningful ritual for everybody.
Yeah, we don't have a shared ritual like the way the ancient Greeks had a shared ritual, which was a reflective place on emotions. We have cinema. This is quite good still. And then we have the museums.
Yeah, yeah.
And we don't have a culture right now who... Maybe we don't have politicians or leaders who really appreciate art in any aspect. When you say art in English, it means a lot visual art. When you say art in French, for example, it means... when you say in Paris, I'm an artist, they look at you like, because you can be an actress or a poet, or it doesn't give you any clue if you say just artiste.
Right.
In the same way, we need to... I wish we had more leaders who would have more respect for art, because we're going to have a pretty boring culture if we continue to devaluate it.
Well, the thing is, people have to engage too. The publicly, the institutions which show art also have to
prioritize it.
Well, they have to show that people come and see it, that they're not just empty halls. It's the same thing that's happening for the churches in Denmark. They're closing tons of churches because they're seeing that there aren't enough people going to church to justify that.
Yeah, but it's not only that, too. You had Napoleon. I don't like Napoleon very much, but I do like Louvre. And he took a fucking big decision. He said, fuck you, France. I don't care about what your opinions are about art, but I will also teach you something. There is great culture in Europe, and I will build Louvre. I will not live there. There was a Louis something living there before, and I will make a museum public for people. So maybe he was a very, very tyrannic person in many levels, but he was also a genius understanding values that sometimes we need a little bit of help to understand them. And today I think Louvre have no problems with tickets.
It's only the most famous museum in the world.
Yeah, so maybe it's also our leaders. It doesn't necessarily come from the public. And I mean, the French section of art in Louvre is like this room. The rest is stolen through war, so it was legal. But he knew exactly what he wanted.
Right.
Carlsberg is the same. When he bought some sculptures from Egypt, mummies, they were sent in stupid boxes with the normal post, because nobody cared to buy them.
Right.
He was buying them for candy prices.
Right.
Now, I'm sure that Egypt wants them back.
Indeed.
Yeah.
I'd imagine they would.
So I really disagree. You need people who have good value, who can think thousands of years ahead of you sometimes. Yeah. We are not all clever. It would be a dreadful world sometimes with only democracy.
Yeah, if someone asked me to think 1,000 years ahead, I'd probably have to say, I'll go ahead and pass on that one. I'll think about tomorrow.
I think you're pretty happy for Glyptoteket in København. I'm pretty happy for Glyptoteket.
Yeah.
That was one-man creation.
Right.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, well, I mean, Denmark is the state, it's Maersk, and it's Carlsberg, right? There are three major forces that...
Yeah, but I'm just saying that fine culture doesn't necessarily come from the masses, even if I am very left-wing person normally.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you have any thoughts on the issue?
It's how, like we have mentioned Paris. In Paris, a lot of people, I mean, you see queues in the exhibitions.
Yeah. I gave up going into Frida Kahlo exhibition.
You cannot see an exhibition quietly. It's difficult. In Greece or here or I don't know where else, it's the opposite. You make an exhibition, you have an opening, and you see your friends in the opening, you see other people. Okay, it's fantastic, but then you just don't know why the exhibition is open. A couple of people every day.
That's such a great feeling, huh?
how logical is this? Why?
Right.
You have after the very nice opening, and you feel like why all this happened? Why do I do this? Why?
But Banja was saying the same to me. Actually, I'm sorry to quote Banja, but she says, I feel like an educator.
The gallerist, yeah.
And it's tough.
It is tough. It's an uphill battle.
She feels like a cultural educator. So she, in a way, employs herself in a position that nobody of the politician asked her to do.
Right. Jesus, yeah. I mean, this is the problem. We can't solve this.
No.
But we can work towards it.
Only with hardcore cultural politicians.
Yeah. Well, I mean, to finish up, I wanted to ask you guys, each of you, to tell me what is the best part and the worst part about being an artist.
You start, I don't know.
Yeah, you have more experience.
The best and the worst is the same. I don't know.
That may be. Answer it however you feel, makes sense.
I almost try to avoid that I'm an artist or I'm not an artist or what I am, and all the question about it comes again and again, and I try almost to avoid it inside me, and I try to not see the line between that being an artist and not being an artist. It helps a little bit also not to feel that I have a special. I don't like to feel that I have a thing to do like an artist.
Right.
I don't have to do nothing for nobody, but I have just to make my own. What my inspiration says, what every day brings, and. Things like that, not to feel that I have that I have to do something.
Right. Well, that would be one of the best parts about being an artist is no one can, you have the freedom to do it or not to do it or to whatever.
Basically, I'm an artist to do whatever I want. This is the answer, because I prefer to do whatever I want. Freedom, yes.
And I guess you're right too. That's also the worst part, in a way. Right?
No,
having
I
a
didn't
million
mean it
choices.
like that. No. For me, my inspiration comes almost daily, and I get very angry if I'm not allowed to exhaust it. So, like that, it's almost it's a rhythm now in my body. I have trained it for very long.
Yeah.
So I saw an interview with Matisse who said he started to practice violin to make sure that he had a break from art, because otherwise he would be too like making a muscle too strong compared to other muscles. So I think I don't know, the best and the worst. I never think of it like that because it doesn't feel like a choice. So if you ask me like a practical thing, the best is the travels. because you can get funding from travels, and I love travels. And the worst is this feeling that culture doesn't prioritize it far close to my normal idea of. I mean, I'm brought up with an art historian. I saw St. Peterskirken in Rome when I was 6, and I've seen a lot of art, and I don't want to sound like a snob. I just really have seen with my eyes the greatness of the mirror art can be for culture, and how much we can develop in all ranges and innovation. And I find it very sad that we don't prioritize more. And that feeling of being a minority with a culture and a heritage that I don't find a minority at all, and was not a minority in previous cultures, that I find strange. Sometimes I was taken like a previous lifetime from the Renaissance and worked from the church, which and put in the Stone Age, and you have to, and you are in the future, so you have to explain people like this was pretty normal, like even 150 years ago. What happened? I mean, it feels really strange. It's almost like a time machine. Somebody took me in a time machine, and you have to start from scratch. And you had just had a great culture, and you're like, what the fuck happened in 100 years? Did you all come from another planet? Did we change genes? That's very weird.
Does the art have get privatized somehow? It doesn't have to do with the state, with the religion, with
maybe,
this, that.
Yeah.
It's this freedom also of individual artists who do whatever he wants. It's good, let's say. But it's dangerous. Let's say, don't give you a frame that where are you?
Don't give you
define
this
you like the old artists who are defined by the religion or the frame that they was, who they work, what they do. But now you're just exposed inside.
But if you go
uncountable possibilities of what you do, what you will not do, what you
yes,
you can do.
But that's more
like
maybe in south of Europe it's a little bit like that, and north of Europe it's like that. But I would say that in Italy, or I don't know, south of Europe is also, but North Italy, I mean Central Europe, if we say Milan, partly also Rome and Paris, have a much more integrated, normal sense of culture. They wouldn't even dream about living without culture. It's such a huge part of their way of living, even just food and everything. I mean, that's what's great about even small thing like Noma. Like, you have a sense of aesthetic decision making and virtues that goes into, and that's also art.
It's not completely gone yet.
No, so that it comes in a new way, perhaps. Yeah.
We're out of time, guys.
Yeah, we're freezing.
Thank you so much for taking part. Thank you for doing this.
Yeah, thank you for raising.
Thank you too.
Yeah,
and thank you guys for coming. Much appreciated. Thank you for listening to this first ever live episode of the Undergang Armchair. Intro and outro music was kindly provided by Johnny Ripper, and today's interstitial music was provided by CSUS. You can find links to their music and all other sorts of great conversations on our soapbox of a website, undergang.net. The show is produced in part with the kind support of the Danish Arts Council. Thank you for joining us.